Kath River stood before the viewing window of the intelligence vessel Silent Watcher. His 4 eyes looked at the stars that stretched across the darkness of space. Behind him, the hum of the ship's engines was soft and steady. He was young for a Volanthe, barely 40 cycles old, but he had already proven himself as one of the best intelligence analysts in the hegemony. His body was covered in a hard shell, like all his kind. His skin was the color of dark metal, and his movements were precise and careful. The Volanthe did not waste energy on unnecessary motion. They did not waste anything at all. Analyst Kath River, a deep voice called from behind him. He turned to face Overseer Molthen, his commanding officer. Molthen was old and covered in the scars of many campaigns. His shell had turned gray with age, and his eyes held the cold wisdom of a species that had conquered dozens of worlds. "Overseer," Kath River said, bowing his head slightly. "You have been selected for a reconnaissance mission," Molthen said. He did not waste words either. A new species has been expanding into contested space. They call themselves humans. Kath River had heard the name before. The reports described them as a young species. Short-lived creatures with soft skin and fragile bodies. They had only been traveling between stars for a few hundred cycles. They were nothing special. "What do we know about them?" Kath River asked. Molthen waved one of his 4 arms. A holographic display appeared between them. It showed a creature standing on 2 legs. It had only 2 arms, 2 eyes, and no natural armor at all. Its skin looked thin and weak. Kath River could see the blood vessels beneath the surface. "They are a prey species," Molthen said. "Soft bodies. Limited senses. They cannot see in the dark. They cannot hear high frequencies. They cannot smell danger approaching. Their lives last only 80 to 100 cycles at most. They are emotional, irrational, and primitive." Kath River studied the image. The human did not look dangerous. It looked like something the Kreth would eat for breakfast. "Why do we care about such creatures?" he asked. "Because they are expanding quickly," Molthen said. "Too quickly. The Council wants to understand their military capabilities before we make contact. You will observe them in combat and return with data." "Combat?" Kath River's antennae twitched with interest. "Who are they fighting?" "The Kreth Horde has attacked one of their colony worlds, a planet called Epsilon Reach 7. Molthen changed the display to show a green and blue world. "The Kreth have been bombarding the surface for 3 weeks. Human resistance continues." Kath River calculated the odds in his mind. The Kreth were brutal fighters. They were large, strong, and they enjoyed killing. The Volanthe had classified them as moderately dangerous. If the Kreth had been attacking for 3 weeks, the humans should have been destroyed by now. "They still resist?" he asked. "Yes," Molthen said. "This is why the Council wants information. The humans should have surrendered or been eliminated. Instead, they continue to fight. We want to know why." Kath River understood. The Council did not like surprises. They wanted to know everything about a species before making decisions. Information was power, and the Volanthe valued power above all things. "When do I leave?" he asked. "Immediately." Molthen handed him a small device. "This is your biological camouflage suit. It will make you appear human to their sensors. You will land behind their defensive lines, observe their military operations, and return with your findings. Do not make contact. Do not interfere. Simply watch and record." Kath River took the device and attached it to his chest. He felt it spread across his shell, covering him in a layer of synthetic skin. When he looked at his reflection in the window, he saw a human staring back at him. The disguise was perfect. "This is a simple mission," Molthen said. "The humans are weak. They will fall soon. The Council merely wants confirmation of what we already know." When you return, we will begin planning their subjugation." Cathraver nodded. He felt no excitement, no fear. The Volanthi did not feel such things strongly. Emotions were inefficient. They clouded judgment and led to poor decisions. War was mathematics, nothing more. You calculated your strength against your enemy's strength, and the larger number won. He walked to the launch bay where his observation pod waited. It was a small vessel designed for stealth. It would carry him to the surface of Epsilon Reach 7 without being detected by either side. As he climbed inside and sealed the hatch, he thought about the humans. Such strange creatures. They lived such short lives, yet they wasted so much of that time on emotions. They loved, they hated, they feared, they hoped. All of it seemed pointless to Cathraver. In the end, numbers decided everything. The pod launched from the Silent Watcher and began its descent toward the planet below. Through the small window, Cathraver could see flashes of light on the surface. Explosions. The Kreth were still attacking, and the humans were still dying. He entered the atmosphere, and the pod began to shake. Fire surrounded him as he fell through the sky. His instruments showed the human defensive line ahead. He would land just behind it, in a safe zone where he could begin his observations. But something went wrong. A piece of debris struck his pod. Alarms screamed in his ears. The pod spun out of control, falling too fast. Cathraver gripped the restraints and prepared for impact. The ground rushed up to meet him. The crash was violent. Metal screamed and tore. Cathraver was thrown against the walls of the pod, despite his restraints. When everything finally stopped moving, he hung upside down in darkness. His body ached. His camouflage suit had been damaged. He could feel his true form showing through in places. He forced the hatch open and crawled out into the night. The air smelled of smoke and blood. The sounds of battle were close. Too close. His pod had landed in the middle of the combat zone. Cathraver looked around, trying to get his bearings. He expected to see humans running away from the fighting. He expected to see panic and chaos. He expected to see a defeated species in its final moments. Instead, he saw something that made no sense. Human soldiers were running toward the explosions, toward the gunfire, toward the death. They were not retreating. They were attacking. Their faces were covered in dirt and blood, but their eyes burned with something Cathraver had never seen before. He watched as a group of humans charged past him, screaming words he did not understand. They ran straight into a wall of Kreth fire. Some of them fell. The others kept running. Cathraver's data slate recorded everything, but his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. This was not logical. This was not mathematics. This was something else entirely. For the first time in his life, Cathraver felt something cold crawl through his shell. It took him a moment to identify the sensation. It was fear, and he did not know why. Cathraver activated what remained of his camouflage and pressed himself against a broken wall. The night was filled with fire and screaming, but he forced himself to focus. He was here to observe. He was here to gather data. He would do his job. The first thing he noticed was the organization. The humans were not running around in panic like animals. They moved in groups, communicating with hand signals when the noise was too loud for words. They covered each other, creating overlapping fields of fire. They moved with purpose. This surprised Cathraver. The reports had said humans were emotional and chaotic, but what he saw was discipline. Exhausted, bleeding, dirty discipline. He crawled closer to a group of human soldiers who had taken cover behind a destroyed vehicle. Their armor was damaged. Their weapons were old and worn. They had clearly been fighting for a very long time. One of them, a female with short dark hair, was speaking into a communication device. "Command, this is Sergeant Chun. We've lost contact with 3rd Squad. Request permission to advance and provide support." A voice crackled back through the static. "Negative, Sergeant. 3rd Squad's position has been overrun. Fall back to secondary line." The female was quiet for a moment. Kath River watched her face through the darkness. He expected to see relief. She had been ordered to retreat, to save herself and her soldiers. Any logical creature would be grateful. But instead, her jaw tightened. Her eyes grew hard. She turned to her squad, and when she spoke, her voice was made of iron. "3rd Squad is gone. Martinez, Okonkwo, Davis, Park, all of them gone." She loaded a fresh magazine into her weapon. "We're not falling back. We're going forward. And we're going to make those lizards pay for every single one of them." Her squad did not argue. They did not question her decision to disobey orders. They simply checked their weapons and nodded. One of them, a large male with a bandage wrapped around his head, actually smiled. "About time," he said. "I owed Park 20 credits. Least I can do is kill the thing that killed him." Kath Raver recorded everything, but his mind was racing. This made no sense. The sergeant was choosing revenge over survival. Her squad was following her into almost certain death. And they were doing it willingly, eagerly. His data slate blinked with an error. Message. Motivation source unidentified. He followed them at a distance as they moved through the ruined streets. The city had been beautiful once. Now it was nothing but broken buildings and burning vehicles. Bodies lay everywhere, both human and Kreth. The smell was terrible. They reached a small plaza where the fighting was intense. Kreth warriors were advancing through the open space, their massive bodies covered in thick scales. They were twice the size of humans, armed with weapons that could cut through armor like paper. The humans should have run. Any rational species would have run. Instead, they attacked. Sergeant Chun led the charge, firing as she ran. Her squad spread out around her, moving like a single organism. Kath River watched as they took down Kreth warriors 3 times their size. They used speed and coordination to overcome their physical weakness. But they were taking losses too. A young human, barely more than a juvenile, was hit by Kreth fire. He fell, clutching his stomach. Blood poured between his fingers. Kath River expected his comrades to leave him. In Volante warfare, wounded soldiers were left behind if they could not move themselves. Resources should not be wasted on the dying. But the humans did not leave him. A medic ran through the open ground, completely exposed to enemy fire. Plasma bolts struck the ground around him, but he did not stop. He reached the wounded soldier, grabbed him under the arms, and began dragging him to cover. A Kreth warrior saw them and raised its weapon. Kath River calculated that the medic had exactly 2.3 seconds to live. But another human stepped into the open. He placed himself between the Kreth and the medic, using his own body as a shield. The plasma bolt hit him in the chest. He fell. The medic kept dragging the wounded soldier to safety. Kath Raver's hands were shaking as he recorded this. The human who had sacrificed himself was dead. He had traded his life for someone he might not even have known. And he had done it without hesitation. Why? The question screamed in Kath Raver's mind. Why would any creature do this? The battle continued through the night. Kath Raver moved from position to position, recording everything. He saw a human pilot crash his damaged fighter directly into a Kreth artillery position, killing himself to destroy the weapon that was massacring his people. He saw a soldier hold a live grenade against a breached wall, using his own body to contain the blast and save the civilians hiding behind him. He saw humans crying over fallen friends, then standing up and returning to the fight with tears still wet on their faces. As the sun began to rise, the Kreth assault finally weakened. The humans had held their line. Barely. The cost had been enormous. Bodies lay everywhere. The survivors were covered in blood and dirt. They could barely stand. But they had won. Kethraver found a quiet corner in a destroyed building and began writing his report. His hands were still shaking. He had been trained to write in cold, precise language. Facts only. No interpretation. No emotion. But as he wrote, he found himself using words he had never used before in an official report. Human combat behavior does not follow predictable patterns, he typed. They display what appears to be complete disregard for personal survival when their companions are threatened. They perform actions that result in their own deaths to protect others. Initial hypothesis of hive mind sacrifice behavior has been rejected. Genetic analysis confirms humans are individuals with no telepathic connection. They choose these actions freely. He paused, staring at the words on his screen. Then he added one more line. Assessment of human military capability, uncertain. He had never written that word in a report before. The Volanthi did not like uncertainty. They liked numbers and probabilities and clear conclusions. But Kethraver could not give them that. Not anymore. He looked out at the human soldiers gathering their dead. They were gentle with the bodies, treating them with respect and care. Some of them were speaking softly, words he could not hear. He saw Sergeant Chun kneeling beside a fallen comrade, holding his hand even though he could no longer feel it. In that moment, Kethraver understood something important. He did not understand what it was yet, but he knew that everything he had been taught about warfare, about survival, about what made a species strong, was wrong. And as the Kreth began to gather for their next assault, he wondered if maybe the Volanthi had made a terrible mistake coming here at all. The night came fast and brought death with it. Kethraver had found a good position in the ruins of what had once been a shopping center. The walls gave him cover, and he could see the human defensive line clearly. He continued to record, filling his data slate with observations that became stranger by the hour. He did not notice the Kreth patrol until it was too late. A massive claw grabbed him from behind, lifting him off the ground. His camouflage suit flickered and died. His true form was revealed, the dark metallic shell of a Volanthi, and the Kreth warriors hissed with surprise and pleasure. "What is this?" The largest one growled. Its breath smelled of rotting meat. A spy from the hegemony? The mighty Volanthi, hiding in the shadows like insects? Kethraver tried to activate his emergency beacon, but the Kreth crushed the device in his hand. Pain shot through his arm. He heard something crack inside his shell. "Take it to Commander Grath," the Kreth ordered. "He will want to see this." They dragged Kethraver through the destroyed streets. His legs scraped against broken concrete and glass. Every movement sent waves of pain through his damaged body. He calculated his chances of survival and found the number to be very small. Commander Grath was a monster even by Kreth standards. He stood in the center of the commercial district, surrounded by the bodies of humans he had personally killed. His scales were dark red, almost black, and his eyes glowed with cruel intelligence. "A Volanthi," he said, examining Kethraver with interest. "How wonderful. The insects who think they rule the galaxy, found crawling in the dirt." He turned to one of his soldiers. "Activate the broadcast array. All frequencies. I want everyone to see this." Kethraver was thrown to the ground in front of a camera drone. He tried to stand, but a Kreth boot slammed into his back, cracking his shell further. Green blood leaked from the wound. "Attention, all species watching this sector," Grath announced. His voice boomed across the battlefield. "Witness what happens to those who spy on the Kreth horde. Witness the death of Volanthi arrogance." He raised his blade. It was a massive weapon, stained with the blood of countless victims. Kethraver closed his eyes. He had failed his mission. He had failed his people. He had learned nothing useful, and now he would die in the dirt of an alien world. Then a voice cut through the silence. A human voice. Negative. That one's ours now. Grath paused, his blade still raised. He looked toward the human lines with confusion. What did you say, pray? The human voice came again, calm and cold. I said that alien is ours. You don't get to kill him. We do. Kethriver opened his eyes. He did not understand what was happening. Grath laughed. It was a horrible sound, like rocks grinding together. You want to die for an insect? Then come and take it. The night exploded. Human soldiers poured out of the darkness from every direction. They came through the ruined buildings, over the piles of debris, through the smoke and fire. They came screaming words that Kethriver's translator could barely process. Remember Helios Station, for the fallen, never forgive. The Kreth were caught completely off guard. They had expected the humans to cower behind their walls. They had not expected an attack. Not for this. Not for an alien spy they had no reason to care about. Kethriver watched in stunned silence as the battle raged around him. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned. The Kreth were stronger, larger, better armed. By every logical calculation, the humans should have been destroyed in minutes. But they did not stop. He saw a human soldier tackled by a Kreth warrior. The Kreth pinned him to the ground and raised its blade to kill. Instead of begging for mercy, the human pulled a grenade from his belt. See you in hell, ugly. The explosion killed them both. He saw a young woman charge directly at Commander Grath. She was small, barely half his size. Her armor was damaged and her weapon was almost empty. But she did not hesitate. She did not slow down. She screamed as she ran, a sound of pure fury that made Kethriver's blood freeze. Grath swung his blade. The woman ducked under it and fired her weapon directly into his face. The Kreth commander stumbled backward, roaring in pain. Other humans swarmed over him, stabbing and shooting until he fell. The Kreth line broke. Kethriver had studied warfare for his entire life. He had watched dozens of species fight and die. He had seen armies crumble for many reasons: lack of supplies, poor leadership, overwhelming force. But he had never seen an army break from fear. The Kreth were running. These massive, brutal predators were fleeing from creatures half their size with inferior weapons and no natural armor. They ran because they had finally understood something that Kethriver was only beginning to grasp. Humans did not fight to win. They fought because they refused to lose. There was a difference. A hand grabbed Kethriver's arm. He looked up and saw a human face. It was a young female, barely more than a juvenile. Her armor was burned and torn. Her visor was cracked, showing one blue eye beneath. Blood ran down her face from a wound on her forehead. "Can you walk?" she asked. Kethriver tried to speak, but only a wet clicking sound came out. "It's okay," she said. "I've got you." She pulled him to his feet and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. She was so small. He must have weighed twice as much as her. But she carried him anyway, moving through the battlefield toward the human lines. "Why?" Kethriver finally managed to ask. "Why did you come for me?" The woman glanced at him. Her face was exhausted and sad and fierce all at the same time. "Because you needed help," she said. "That's enough." Around them, the other humans were doing the same. They were not pursuing the fleeing Kreth. They were gathering their wounded, their dead, and even their enemies who could no longer fight. They were gentle where minutes ago they had been savage. Kethriver's vision began to blur. The damage to his body was worse than he had realized. He felt himself falling, but the young woman held him up. "Stay with me," she said. "We're almost there. You're going to be okay. We don't leave anyone behind. Anyone? He whispered. Anyone. The last thing Keth River saw before the darkness took him was the human lines growing closer. He saw soldiers rushing forward to help carry him. He saw faces that showed concern for an alien they had never met. His final conscious thought was simple and devastating. The Council was wrong. About everything. Keth River woke to the smell of medicine and the sound of soft voices. His body felt strange. Heavy and numb in some places, sharp with pain in others. For a moment, he did not remember where he was. Then it all came back. The crash. The battle. The capture. The rescue. He opened his eyes slowly. The light above him was soft and warm. He was lying on some kind of medical bed in a tent made of thick fabric. Around him, he could see other beds. Other patients. Humans. A face appeared above him. It was an older human male with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore white clothing and held a small device in his hand. "Easy there," the human said. "Don't try to move too much. You were pretty badly hurt." Keth River tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The human seemed to understand. He held a cup of water to Keth River's mouth and helped him drink. "Better?" the human asked. "Yes," Keth River managed. "Where am I?" "Field hospital," the human said. "You've been unconscious for about 16 hours. My name is Dr. Nathan Park. I've been treating your injuries." He paused and smiled slightly. "I'll admit, you're my first Volanti patient. I had to do a lot of reading." Keth River looked down at his body. His shell had been repaired. The cracks were filled with some kind of synthetic material that had hardened to match his natural armor. The wounds on his arms had been cleaned and bandaged with care. "You fixed me," he said. It was not a question. He simply could not believe it. "That's my job," Dr. Park said. "Wounds don't care what species you are." "Neither do I." A cold feeling spread through Keth River's body. "I was your enemy. I was spying on you. Why would you help me?" Dr. Park shrugged. "You were hurt. You needed help. That's all that matters in this tent." He checked something on his device and nodded. "Your vital signs are stable. You should make a full recovery. Now rest. Someone will want to talk to you later." He moved on to the next patient, a human soldier with bandages covering most of his face. Keth River watched him work. The doctor treated every patient the same way, with gentle hands and soft words. It did not matter how bad the wounds were. It did not matter if the patient would live or die. He gave them all the same care. Keth River lay back and stared at the ceiling of the tent. His mind was struggling to process everything. In Volanti medical facilities, resources were carefully distributed. Patients who were unlikely to survive received minimal care. Those who could not return to duty were given efficient endings. It was logical. It was efficient. It was wrong. He understood that now. Hours passed. Keth River drifted in and out of sleep. When he was awake, he watched the humans around him. Soldiers came to visit their wounded friends. They brought small gifts, food and drink, and sat beside the beds telling stories and jokes. Some of them cried. None of them were ashamed of it. He saw a female soldier sit beside the body of a dead comrade for nearly an hour, just holding his hand. When she finally stood up, she wiped her eyes, straightened her armor, and walked back out to the fighting. Her face was calm. Her steps were steady. The Volanti had always believed that emotions made species weak. Grief was a waste of time. Attachment was a vulnerability. But watching these humans, Keth River saw something different. He saw grief transform into determination. He saw love become armor. He saw the very emotions that should have broken them instead making them stronger. That evening, a new visitor came to see him. The human was tall and broad, with dark skin and a face full of scars. His uniform marked him as someone important. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of a leader who had earned his authority through action. "I'm Colonel Marcus Webb," the human said, sitting down beside Kethraver's bed. "How are you feeling?" "I am alive," Kethraver said carefully. "Thanks to your soldiers." "Thanks to Private Rodriguez," Webb corrected. "She's the one who carried you out. 23 years old. Lost half her squad that night." He paused. "She volunteered to go back for you. Nobody ordered her to do it. Why?" The question escaped before Kethraver could stop it. "I am not one of you. I am a spy for a species that might become your enemy. Why would she risk her life for me?" Colonel Webb was quiet for a long moment. His eyes studied Kethraver with an expression that was hard to read. "You want to know the truth?" he finally said. "I asked her the same thing. You know what she told me? She said she saw you on the ground, about to be executed, and she remembered something her father told her when she was a little girl. He said, the measure of a person isn't how they treat their friends. It's how they treat their enemies." Kethraver did not know how to respond to this. "We're not naive," Webb continued. "We know you were here to study us. We know your people might attack us someday, but that doesn't change what's right. You were scared. You were hurt. You needed help. That's enough for us." "That is not logical," Kethraver said. "No," Webb agreed. "It's not. But it's human." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was Kethraver's data slate, damaged but still functional. "We could have destroyed this," Webb said. "We could have erased everything you recorded. But we're not going to do that. We're going to give it back to you, and we're going to send you home." Kethraver stared at him. "You are letting me go? With all the information I gathered?" "Yes." Webb placed the data slate in Kethraver's hands. "We want you to show them. Show them what we do. Show them what we're willing to sacrifice. Show them that we're not prey. We're not victims. And if anyone comes to our worlds looking for conquest, they'll find something else instead. What will they find?" Webb smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had buried too many friends and planned to bury many more. "They'll find us," he said. "And we don't give up. We don't surrender. We don't know how." He stood and walked toward the tent entrance. Before he left, he turned back one more time. "When you write your report, make sure they understand one thing. We didn't save you because it helped us. We saved you because it was right. And if that confuses them, good. Maybe it'll make them think twice." Then he was gone. Kethraver held the data slate against his chest. His hands were shaking again. Not from fear this time. From something else. Something he did not have a name for. Outside the tent, he could hear humans singing. It was a sad song. A song about loss and memory. But underneath the sadness, there was something else. Something unbreakable. For the first time in his life, Kethraver wondered if maybe the Volanti had been the primitive ones all along. The council chamber was the largest room in the Volanti hegemony. Its walls stretched up toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Thousands of seats surrounded a central platform where speakers stood to address the gathered leaders. Every important decision in Volanti history had been made in this room. Today, Kethraver stood on that platform. He looked different now. His shell still bore the scars of his mission. The cracks had been filled with human medical compounds, creating pale lines across his dark armor. He was living evidence of what he had witnessed. The council members stared down at him with their cold, calculating eyes. At the front sat the High Council, the 7 most powerful leaders of the hegemony. Among them was Overseer Molten, his former commander. Molten's face showed nothing, but Kethraver could feel his disapproval. Analyst Kethraver, the council speaker announced. You have requested to address this body regarding your reconnaissance mission to the human colony world Epsilon Reach 7. The council will hear report. Cathraver bowed his head respectfully. His hearts were beating fast, but he kept his voice steady. Honored Council, I was sent to observe human combat capabilities and assess their threat level. I have completed my mission. However, my conclusions differ significantly from initial projections. Molthen leaned forward. Explain. Cathraver activated his data slate. The room darkened as holographic images appeared around him. The council saw the ruins of New Meridian City. They saw the human soldiers moving through the smoke and fire. Our initial assessment classified humans as a prey species, Cathraver began. Short-lived, physically weak, emotionally unstable. We believed their military capabilities to be primitive and their species to be an easy target for subjugation. He paused. We were wrong. A murmur passed through the council chamber. The Volanti did not like being told they were wrong. During my time on Epsilon Reach 7, I observed human combat behavior that defied all known models of warfare. I witnessed humans perform actions that resulted in their certain death in order to protect others. I witnessed them continue fighting long after any rational species would have surrendered. I witnessed them treat enemy wounded with the same care they gave their own. He showed them the recording of the medic running through enemy fire to save a fallen comrade. He showed them the pilot crashing his fighter into the Kreth artillery. He showed them Private Rodriguez carrying him to safety with bullets flying around her. This is impossible, one council member said. These must be isolated incidents. No species can sustain this level of sacrifice. That is what I believed as well, Cathraver replied. So I analyzed the data more carefully. I cross-referenced human history. I studied their culture, their literature, their songs. He changed the display to show text from human records. Humans have a concept they call heroism. It describes individuals who sacrifice themselves for others without expectation of reward. In Volanti culture, such behavior would be considered a malfunction, a defect to be corrected. In human culture, it is celebrated. They build monuments to these individuals. They tell stories about them to their children. They aspire to be like them. Ridiculous, Molthen interrupted. A species cannot function if its members constantly throw their lives away. Evolution would eliminate such behavior. With respect, Overseer, you are thinking like a Volanti. Cathraver faced his former commander directly. Humans do not throw their lives away. They invest them. They believe that some things are worth dying for. Love, honor, freedom, family. These are not weaknesses to humans. They are the reasons they fight. He showed them his final recording. It was Colonel Webb standing in the field hospital. We didn't save you because it helped us. We saved you because it was right. The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. The Kreth horde outnumbered the humans on Epsilon Reach 7 by a factor of 3 to 1. Cathraver continued. The Kreth had superior weapons, superior armor, and superior physical strength. By every calculation, the humans should have been destroyed within the first week of fighting. What happened? The council speaker asked. The humans won. Another murmur, louder this time. Not only did they win, but they broke the Kreth assault so completely that the horde has withdrawn from that entire sector. The Kreth, who fear nothing, have learned to fear humans. He pulled out a small object from his belt. It was a photograph, worn and creased. The image showed a group of young humans in armor, smiling at the camera. Half of them had X marks drawn over their faces. Private Rodriguez gave this to me before I left. These were her squad mates. The ones with marks are dead. She asked me to show you. She said, show them who stopped the Kreth. Show them what it costs. Cathraver held up the photograph so the entire council could see it. These are the faces of human soldiers. They are young. Some of them are barely adults. They have families waiting for them at home, dreams they will never fulfill, lives they will never live. But when their friends were threatened, when their world was attacked, they stood up. They fought. They died. Not because they wanted to, but because they refused to let others die in their place. He lowered the photograph. You asked me to assess whether humanity could be conquered. I have your answer. They cannot. They should not. Because humans do not fight like we do. We calculate acceptable losses. We weigh costs against benefits. We surrender when the mathematics favor retreat. Humans do not do this. To them, every loss is unacceptable. Every friend who falls is a debt that must be paid. They will break the universe to make it right. He took a deep breath. There is a human saying, from the ashes we rise. Their homeworld has suffered extinction events, global wars, plagues that killed millions. Every time, they were nearly destroyed. Every time, they came back stronger. They have been fighting extinction since the day they evolved. They do not know how to surrender. I do not believe they are capable of it. The council speaker leaned forward. What is your recommendation, analyst? River looked at the scars on his arms, at the human compounds fused into his shell. He thought about Dr. Park treating his wounds with gentle hands. He thought about Colonel Webb returning his data slate. He thought about Private Rodriguez saying, "You're gonna be okay. We don't leave anyone behind." I recommend that humanity be designated as a Class Omega threat, he said. The first species in Volanti history to receive this classification without ever attacking us. The chamber erupted in noise. Council members shouted at each other. Some demanded proof. Others demanded war. Moulton's face had gone pale with shock. The council speaker raised a hand for silence. And what action do you recommend we take regarding this threat? River smiled. It was an expression he had learned from the humans. Send ambassadors, bring gifts, and pray they accept. The vote took less than an hour. For the first time in history, the Volanti chose not to conquer a weaker species. They chose peace. Not because they were merciful, not because they were kind, because they were afraid. River stood by the viewing window of the diplomatic vessel as it entered human space. The ship was painted with new symbols designed to show peaceful intent. On its hull was an image of a cracked helmet visor and an outstretched hand. Beneath it, in the human language, was a single word, friend. Behind him, the ambassador was practicing human greetings. She was nervous. All of them were nervous. They were about to meet the species that had done what no other had ever done. They had made the Volanthi afraid. River touched the photograph still tucked inside his armor. He wondered if Private Rodriguez was still alive. He wondered if she would ever know what her kindness had accomplished. Probably not. Humans did not seem to realize how extraordinary they were. To them, saving a stranger from death was simply the right thing to do. They did not understand that this single belief, this simple choice to value life over logic, had changed the course of galactic history. The first human transmission came through the communication system. It was a simple message. Unidentified vessel, you are entering United Earth territory. State your intentions. The ambassador looked at River. Her hands were trembling. Tell them the truth, he said. Tell them we come in peace. Tell them we want to learn. Tell them we finally understand. The ambassador took a deep breath and spoke into the communicator. Human vessels, this is the Volanti diplomatic ship Unity. We come with open hands and humble hearts. We wish to be your friends. There was a long pause. Then, for the first time, River heard a human laugh. It was a warm sound, a welcoming sound. Wow, The human voice said, "I guess that's a good start. Come on in. We'll put some coffee on." Keth Raver did not know what coffee was. But as the ship moved forward into human space, surrounded by escort vessels that could have destroyed them in seconds, he knew one thing for certain. He had been sent to observe humans in combat. He had come back as proof of their strength, their courage, and their impossible, illogical, beautiful kindness. And he would never be the same again.